Hey everyone, we're Nick
and Rachel.
If you're new here and haven't been following our adventures up to now, then you'll typically find us vlogging our travels around the world. However, in this series of videos, we're trying something a little bit different. Because as we have gone through each of these new and amazing countries, we found that there's a few things that are a little bit different to what we're used to in the UK and Canada.
The reason that we have this channel is to share our travel experiences in the hopes of inspiring others to travel more. With that, we want to share some tips and tricks that we picked up along the way in each of the countries that we visited, so that if you want to go to the same places, you'll be armed with some helpful information to help make planning and navigating around a little bit easier.
Today's video is going to focus on traveling through Bolivia. If you've been watching our videos, you'll know that we visited La Paz and Uyuni while we were there. While a few of the pointers that we'll be giving you will be specifically about these places, the majority will actually just be about the country as a whole.
We hope that you find these useful. When you arrive to Bolivia, there is a customs form that you're going to need to fill out. However, if you've arrived into the main airport at La Paz, there is Wi-Fi and a QR code at immigration, so you can just fill it out as you're standing in line. It shouldn't take more than about 5 minutes.
Once you've gone through customs and immigration though, then the next challenge is getting from the airport to where you're staying in La Paz. We found that to be a little bit more of a challenge. It doesn't seem like there's any public transport that goes to and from the airport, so therefore taxi and rideshare options are really the only things that you have. We didn't really want to go with an official airport taxi because they are notorious for overcharging for their services, so we looked at rideshares instead. However, it looks like Uber is not very widely used. It seems like the better thing to use for Bolivia specifically is an app called InDrive. Now, if you've seen any of our videos from other parts of South America, then you'll know that InDrive is an app that we have frequently used and it has been very useful. In terms of how it works, it's very similar to Uber, but it's more of a bidding process before you actually get in the car. So you set a price, any prospective driver can see that, and then they negotiate the price with you, and should you accept that, that'll be the price that you pay in cash when you actually arrive at your destination with them. The recommended prices on the apps have usually been reasonable, and typically speaking, we haven't got into much of a negotiation war with any drivers. However, in Bolivia, because they realize that they're one of the only affordable options to get you from the airport into the city, they have more negotiation power. So expect to pay a fair amount more than what the app is recommending that you pay. While there are not any direct public transport links to and from the airport, there is actually a cable car that can take you from the center of the city up as close to the airport as possible in El Alto. You're looking for the purple line specifically. If you go from the city center to the end of that line, then apparently it's about a 5-minute cab ride to get to the airport. And we're going to cover this in a later point, but public transport is absolutely dirt cheap, and obviously with a shorter distance, then it means you pay less for a cab as well. So if you are fortunate enough to have a flight during the day when the cable cars are running, then you can find yourself actually getting to and from the airport for barely any money at all.
Bolivia is very proud of their public transportation in La Paz, which is the cable car. There are multiple lines, although it still doesn't cover the entire city, but it can certainly help you get around the majority of the city and avoid having to climb up horrendous hills. And the good news is it is dirt cheap to use. It is 3 Bolivianos per person per ride. And because it's a cable car, it offers some of the most spectacular scenery. So if you're going from El Alto, the airport area, well, also there's an amazing market up there that you should check out too. But if you're going from El Alto down to the center of La Paz or vice versa, It's just phenomenal views of the city in the valley. So even if you don't really want to use it or need to use it, find an excuse to use it just for the scenery.
On to other practicalities. The first, and we always cover this with every country, is about drinking water. Unlike a number of other South American countries where certain places are kind of semi-potable, so washing your toothbrush or whatever is fine, Bolivia is not one of those countries. We have been told that the water is neither safe to drink nor okay to brush your teeth with or anything like that. You should basically stay away from using the tap water for anything involving your mouth. So with that, make sure that you invest in bottled water, which thankfully is incredibly affordable for your stay in the country.
The currency in Bolivia is called Bolivianos. And just like many other countries, the way to get cash in the country is to withdraw it from an ATM. However, what we found is that the fees in order to access your money at most ATMs is pretty high at about $7 per withdrawal. So if you are going to accept that fee, then it's best to withdraw a large amount of Bolivianos. Try and calculate the amount that you're going to need for your entire trip, so you're not having to pay that $7 fee over and over again to keep withdrawing money. We have heard that BNB is the one bank that doesn't charge you a service fee to withdraw your money, but we can't confirm it because we didn't use them. We needed money as soon as we got to the airport, and there are a number of ATMs there, but that wasn't one that we saw, I don't think. And so we did end up paying the $7 fee. And I think we actually managed to only pay it the one time, fortunately. But the other thing you need to be aware of is that some of the ATMs don't let you withdraw a large sum of money at once, which can then obviously affect your need to take out money on multiple occasions and pay the service fee and so on. From withdrawing the money the one time at the airport though, we did find that Banco fee did allow us to withdraw a large enough sum that would last us the entire duration of our stay. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you can't find a BNB, then Banco fee at least does allow you to take out more money.
The reason that we harp on about making sure that you have cash is because cash is generally the most accepted form of money in Bolivia. So generally anything from local restaurants to hotels, walking tours, public transport, they're all really going to favor cash over anything else. However, for higher end establishments, such as the more bougie hotels and more bougie restaurants, then they may accept card. However, those places are fewer and further between, which is why we're really stressing making sure that you have physical Bolivianos on you at most times.
Temperature is an interesting thing when it comes to being in the Andes, which La Paz and Uyuni definitely are. The temperatures during the day stay fairly consistent throughout the year. However, in their winter, which is our summer being from the northern hemisphere, it may be drier, but it's also colder at night specifically. Temperatures can drop to about 0 degrees. And one of the things we notice is that a lot of the establishments, including some hostels and hotels, don't have central heating. So it's best to make sure that you pack layers so that you can keep yourself warm enough during the day, but also more so at night, or just make sure that you are going to a hotel or hostel and asking for a ton of blankets to keep yourself warm, because being cold, especially at night, is no fun. However, one little trick is that if there is an air conditioning unit that just hangs on the wall, I think a lot of people who stay in hostels or guest houses will probably know what I'm talking about, then obviously in the summer you would have it 20 degrees or something like that, whatever you like it. However, you can crank these things up to 28 or 30 degrees, and that serves as a heater. So if they have one of those, then you can just put that on, and that is your heating source.
Another point about the Andes is altitude. We would hope that this didn't need to be said, but this is just a reminder that when you get to Bolivia, you are going to one of the highest countries in the world in terms of altitude. La Paz sits at 3,500 meters above sea level. El Alto, which is the airport, is 600 meters above that, and the Uyuni salt flats at about 3,800 meters. Therefore, we are here to tell you that altitude is no joke whatsoever. When we arrived, we had thankfully spent some time elsewhere in the Andes in Peru, and we had acclimatized by that point, so actually being there was fine and we didn't have any altitude sickness symptoms. However, we did encounter people who were really feeling it. Some of them had headaches, some of them had stomach problems, and that is because they did not take the time to acclimatize properly. So we are going to put this PSA out. If you're going to anywhere in the world that does have high altitudes, make sure that you take enough time to properly acclimatize by giving yourself 2 to 4 days in that location to get used to it. If you need to, then take some of the local teas such as coca and munya to get yourself up to a point where you're feeling about normal at altitude before you go on and you do anything even vaguely strenuous. While you may not feel absolutely 100% in the same way that you may do at lower altitudes, it will definitely feel a lot easier and you won't feel as many stresses and strains when you're going about the country.
You'll be pleased to know that food is quite affordable in Bolivia, especially if you go to the right places. Street vendors and markets are a great place to get delicious traditional food at a very affordable price. Bring your cash and your Spanish. Some of the things that we recommend you try while in Bolivia are salteñas, tucumanas, choripan, queso humacha, and pique macho. Those are just some of the dishes that we sampled and really enjoyed. Obviously, like in any other country, sit-down meals will generally cost you more. However, a plate of food should not cost you more than $5 or $6 at most. And as I mentioned before, street vendors can be as little as $1 per item.
One of the major things that you're going to want to do while you're in Bolivia is go to these salt flats. And for that, then you're going to need a bus to take you to Uyuni. However, it is worth noting that in our experience anyway, I'm not sure if we just went through the wrong people, but certainly it would appear that buses that take you from La Paz through to Uyuni only run overnight. So be prepared for that as you plan your itineraries for this country. The good news is though, there are a huge number of operators you can book online if you want to, but it may actually be a little bit cheaper if you book in person. And generally speaking, you're going to want to look for anything that says bus cama. What that translates to is literally bed bus. And what that means is you essentially get a seat that reclines to about 160 degrees, so almost laying flat. And it is extremely comfortable and a great way to make sure that you get some kip on your overnights. We did see some locals also bring pillows and blankets, but I think we slept just fine without taking those. It's purely based on your preference. But either way, it will definitely be an overnight that takes you to Uyuni from La Paz, and also going back to La Paz from Uyuni will all be overnight. So just be prepared for that.
In order to visit Uyuni, you're definitely going to want to book a tour, and you need to make sure that your tour includes an English-speaking guide. Because there are a lot of Spanish tourists, you'd actually be surprised at how hard-pressed you'll be to find a tour that includes an English-speaking guide. And we actually encountered a little bit of difficulty because there were certain tour operators that advertised an English-speaking guide, and then we had one contact us less than 24 hours before our tour telling us that the English guide was no longer available for our date. And so we had to scramble to find another company that did have space and an English-speaking guide available. Also be aware, because some of the tour operators haven't advertised that they have an English-speaking guide in a few places on their advertisement, and then in a different place on their advertisement, it says Spanish speaking only. So just look through all the details before you book, and also be aware that a tour with an English speaking guide is probably going to be a little bit more expensive than one with a Spanish speaking guide.
Generally speaking, though, and I think this is really just a blanket statement for all of Latin America, aside from Brazil, of course, come armed with Spanish. When people talk to you, they will be expecting you to reply in Spanish. They will not necessarily have the English to be able to carry a conversation with you if you speak at them in English. So with that, as a means of being both understood and also respectful to the locals, come armed with a basic understanding of Spanish.
And that's our list of tips and tricks for Bolivia. We hope that you found these pointers helpful and that you can apply them to your future travels. Of course, we understand that this is not an exhaustive list, so if you have any questions or if you have more advice, please leave us a comment below.
Until next time, though, take care.
And keep smiling.